Hello, in this lecture we're going to work some test type problems, shorter type problems that could fit within a multiple choice type format. So we have here, Corp uses the weighted average method for inventory cost and had the following information available for the year. Equivalent units for production for the year are what? So we're going to use the weighted average, different from the first in first out method, and that it's actually a bit more simplified to do so. So if we use the weighted average method, we're going to start with the beginning WIP, work in process here, which they gave us to be the 320. Now because it's the weighted method, we're just going to take that 320 and we're not going to be doing anything with the percentage here of completion. And then we're going to have the units that are started, and the units that will be started are going to be the 4400 started units, and we're going to take the units that are in ending inventory, and that's going to be the 520. So that's going to be our calculations. I'm going to put a negative 520, and that will give us, what I'm going to do is take this plus this minus that. I'm going to put my cursor here and go to the Home tab, font, underline that. We'll do that with the sum functions. I'm going to equals the sum of the 320, the 44, the minus the 520. So obviously if we did that in a calculator, it's 320 plus 4400 minus the 520 there, gives us the 4,200. Then we're going to take a look at the ending work in process. And I'm actually going to move this over a bit so we can do kind of a calculation. So I'm going to highlight this, I'm going to put my cursor right there and just move it over here, and we're going to have the ending work in process. We have the 520 units, and this is where we do still have to take into account the equivalent units here. So we're going to say times 80% or 0.8. 80%, I'm going to put my cursor on here, Home tab, numbers, add decimals, or go to the percentage. There we have that. And we're going to say these are 80% complete that are in ending work in process. So we're going to take the 520 times the 80%, and we have the 4. So of these 520 units, 80% had been completed. Equivalent units 416. We're going to go to the Home tab, font, underline, and then just add those up. We're going to say this equals the sum of the 4,002 plus the 416, and that will give us our answer of equivalent units of production for the year. Next one says that a company uses the FIFO method of inventory costing at the start of the period. Department has 46,000 units in beginning work in process with inventory which were 37% complete. The department completed and transferred 172,000 units at the end of the period. 19,000 units were in ending work in process and 72% complete. The department had labor costs at the beginning goods in process inventory 94,000 and total labor costs during the period of 726,725. Compute the equivalent per unit labor. Okay, so a couple things to note here. We're using the FIFO and not the average method, so we're going to have to look at the beginning and inventory and break that out. And when we're talking about labor, then we're talking about a conversion type cost. So remember, when we think about these things, when we think about a long problem, we usually have the materials and then the conversion, which is the labor and the overhead. We're looking at the conversion being the labor, trying to find the labor per equivalent unit. Okay, so let's do that. We're going to say that we're going to start off in this conversion type of problem, and we're going to start off with the beginning units that we have in our department. And the beginning units we have are 46,000 units. Now we're talking about a conversion, so we have to think about, well, how much of that conversion will be done this time period, like this month or so. And to give that, they're going to have to tell us how much was in there last month. They said last month it was 37% complete. Well, then this month it's going to be 100% minus 37%. Let's do that calculation. 1 minus 0.37. Going to put my cursor back on here. Home tab, numbers group, percent. That's 63%. So if we did 37% last time, we're going to do 63% this time. Therefore, total units to account for 46 in beginning times what we got to finish up this time period means that the equivalent units that we will be completing this time period will be the 28 here. So then we're going to have the started and completed. This is going to be very important for the FIFO method because that will mean that these have been totally started and completed for this method. And we got to kind of figure that out sometimes depending on the information given to us. And what they gave us, what we know is that 172,000 units were transferred out of this department to the next department. And we know that under the FIFO method that 46,000 of them were already in there. Therefore, we didn't start them this period. So if we sent out 172 and we already had 46 of those in their beginning, then the ones that we started and completed would be the 172 that we transferred out, and then we're going to subtract those, the units that were already in there at the beginning, because those are part of the units that we transferred out that we didn't start because we started them last time, and then enter, and that's going to give us the 126. Now, of course, all of those are totally done. That's why we're going to calculate this. That's why we have the start and completed, because 100% is then done this time period. So we're going to make that a percent. We're going to multiply that out. This equals to 126 times 100 and enter. And then we're going to have the ending units. So we've got the ending units here. And the ending units are going to include the 19,000 units we need to account for. And once again, we have to determine how much of those have been completed in terms of equivalent units. The problem's going to have to give us some type of percentage to estimate that. That percentage given is 72%. So 72%, 0.72. We're not going to say 1 minus 0.72 as we did up here, because the 72 is what we did this time period if it's in ending work in process, as opposed to if it's in beginning work in process. So we're going to go to the home tab, we're going to go to the numbers, we're going to make that a percent. Then we're going to multiply that out. I'm going to say this equals the 19,000 times the 72%. That gives us equivalent units here. So if we were going to compare these, we're going to have the total units. We can add these up and compare that to the equivalent units. I'm just going to put the underline here, font, underline, and sum that up. Total units we're accounting for, 46 plus the 126 plus the 19, 191. Equivalent units is always going to be equal to or less, equals the sum of the 28,980, the 126, the 13,680, equivalent units of 168,660. So then what we need to do is apply those to the dollar amount here. So remember, we're talking about the conversion dollar amount for the labor. So we had a labor costs. That's the conversion amount that we had to pay, which was $726,725 for this time period in dollars. And then we're going to have this, the equivalent units that we're going to have to account for. And we, of course, calculated that to be this 168,660. Going to underline that, going to go to the home tab, font, underline that. That gives us equal to the dollar amount that we're going to apply out or divide by the 168,660 units. To apply it out, we come up to 4. I'm going to go to the home tab, numbers, add some decimals, 431. And you do need to account for be careful of rounding. So notice it's not perfectly rounded in this particular problem. So when you use something within Excel, just remember that it could be rounded there, and obviously whatever problem you're putting it into, you need to round that out as needed. And that's going to be the dollar amount that we're going to apply out to equivalent units for the conversion in this case.